This is the video. We'll be going through the texturing of the RPG, and I hope, sort of in this video, I'll be able to explain all the processes I used to texture this RPG to sort of make it look like it should belong in the Fortnite world. Hopefully, these processes will be useful to everyone on the team. And with that, we'll begin. So at the moment, I'm just selecting the high poly mesh for the RPG, and I am just setting it to _HP_LP, as those are the mesh underscores I used. They'll change depending on how you bake things. For a test bake, I'd use subsampling 2x2 and a 1024, but for this bake, I've gone for a full 4x4 subsampling, anti-aliasing, and a full 2048 bake. So there, you can see I set ambient occlusion to same mesh name. So what that'll do is it means that when it's baking the ambient occlusion of a mesh, it will only bake it on each mesh rather than baking it throughout the model. When baking ID, I set this to material color. This is because I've set my materials on my high poly mesh in Maya. What this will do is allow me to basically bake what's called an ID map of color onto the mesh. This won't appear in the game, it won't ever be used in the game or exported, but what it will do is allow me to texture quickly and efficiently using color sampling, as we will see once I've skipped through the baking process. So here's me currently just opening the file I did last night. This is so that I can just quickly reference what I've already done and go through it again. So if you see me clicking off the screen, that's what it'll be, just kind of looking for color values I already have. So the first material I apply is steel gun matte. So this is the material I've used as the base for the general metal on the mesh, and as you can see currently it looks nothing like Fortnite. So the first thing we're going to do is just delete the scratches layer. Fortnite doesn't have much in the way of micro detail like scratches, so you don't need it. I also turn off the roughness, height, ambient occlusion, and I'll keep on the height. I turn off the roughness and ambient occlusion layers. So what this does is means I can keep a consistent roughness map as we go forward and help kind of get that cartoony look down. Here you can see I'm playing with the metal color. What I'm going to do is color sample that from the one I already have. In your cases, you can reference that from the color sample sheet that should be pinned in the art channel in the Discord. I will be updating that regularly, but basically use those colors and we can keep all the weapons looking, and generally assets in general, but most importantly the weapons, looking a similar kind of, keeping a consistent look throughout the entire game basically. So here, yep, just gonna color sample that, and now that's ready to go. So here I've just turned the dirt intensity down to 1, once again getting rid of that micro detail that really kind of helps make it look like it's Fortnite. None of these other settings really do much that is relevant for R, aside from turning down the rust, again, wanting to keep that Fortnite look. And that is more or less our primary gunmetal grey. So here I'm just renaming the layer to base steel, just so I know, kind of can keep track of what I'm doing. So now I'm going to do add mask with color selection. If you set up different colors and baked an ID map on your high poly, you get this kind of pop-up, and it allows you to select the color. So as you can see, this has applied the gunmetal to only the grey areas that were in the color ID map. It's important that you set different colors for where you want different materials. So in this case, we've got a different color for leather, a different color for where wood will be, a different color for painted steel, and a different color for lighter steel. So here I'm using the wood American cherry, and this is what I'm using to do the wood on the rocket launcher. Once again, delete the roughness and the ambient occlusion. I end up keeping the metal on here, and add mask with color selection. Because of how I've laid out the UVs, at the moment the wood is wrapping around in the wrong direction. This is a problem for us. The solution, however, is fairly simple. All we need to do is go to the rotation tab and just simply rotate it 90 degrees. You can then play with the offset and kind of get the right position of the wood, but that way we have the wood grain going along the weapon rather than up it. This helps it look nicer and is just generally better. And yeah, we've got our wood. And again, quick and simple. So again, for the wood colour, we're doing the same thing as we did before. We're going to colour sample that from the chart. I had this open in another monitor, but you see the button I'm pressing, and all you need to do is drag it over the area that you want to colour sample. Here I'm kind of just playing with the fibres and the different layers of the wood just to see kind of what looks I can get, but I don't want to go for something insanely detailed, so I'm going to keep the settings somewhat low, but with the fibres high. Here I'm just playing with settings in general. I'm going to mess around with the actual texture itself, and kind of just play with the position, see if I can get an area that looks quite nice. And there we have it. That's the wood pretty much sorted. So here I've duplicated the base steel layer, and I've applied the same settings to a different colour area. However, this is going to be a lighter colour steel, and this is so we can kind of just help differentiate some areas in steel and help kind of break up the overall solid black of the rocket launcher. So once again, I'm going to colour sample it. However, this time I'm using the colour that I've listed as light steel. What's important to note here is that at the moment this looks darker, and that's because the other thing I did was on this metal layer, I actually reduced the contrast. So in basic parameters, just reduce the contrast and take that down to -0.44. Once again, this helps get that lighter steel band and sort of, it very subtly breaks up the overall shapes and forms. Everything else has already been done because we duplicate the base steel, so we don't really need to worry about that. But if you are making a light steel from scratch, that again, turn down the dirt intensity, turn down the rust intensity. So here we're just going to rename this to lighter steel. So here I'm making a fill layer. Now, as you've seen before, I've been turning off all the roughness maps on all of the layers I've made thus far. This is because we're going to set the roughness on this fill layer to 0.5. This fill layer will only be used for roughness. I currently have ambient occlusion on, but I end up turning this off. Ultimately, all you want at the bottom is a fill layer with roughness set on 0.5 and nothing else. This way it'll keep the roughness of the overall map clean. What you can see me doing here is just kind of testing out putting ambient occlusion on the fill layer, but it didn't look too great, so I ended up turning it off. And so we're renaming that layer to roughness grey and this to ambient occlusion. Ultimately, I believe I ended up deleting this layer, so I'm just going to skip this area. So here I'm grabbing the baked lighting material. So Fortnite's weapons they have what's called baked lighting, which basically because the developers didn't have normal maps in the beginning of the game, they had to essentially simulate lighting by putting it in the base color. So that's what we're going to do here. So set this layer to overlay, and you want to set the opacity of it to about 25-ish. Play with it, but that's generally the value you're going to want to go for. And already you can see the difference that it makes when I turn the layer off. It kind of adds shadow in the areas that need it and lightens the areas that also need lightening. So once again, looking at the color sheet that we've got, we're going to turn up the edges intensity and smoothness to kind of really sort of make it less jarring. And we're going to put the sun vertical angle on 270 degrees. This will ensure that the sun is coming down directly on top of the weapon, and therefore light it evenly from the top. The sun color I put on the color sheet, but honestly I'm not sure if I actually ended up changing it at all. Here you can see I somehow ended up with a bit of a weird glitch. I'm not sure what happened, but my wood material somehow went a bit weird. So, and I think that's because I put the baked lighting material on the wood layers by accident. Also, all I'm going to do here is just, when I figure it out, reassign it back to wood. So once again, we're just going through the process of selecting the wood colour because I am an idiot and somehow managed to mess that up. And then, because we've got a black mask currently applied, once we apply the colour selection again, everything will be fine. For the leather wrap, or the grip, I used the default substance material leather stylized. And honestly, I didn't actually have to play with it all that much because I was actually quite happy with the results it was giving me pretty much off the bat. So once again, color mask, and now this is all selected. And I pretty much left the leather as it was. I didn't really find much to really complain about. I just turned off the roughness map. I think I might have even left it on just because of how inconsequential it was. But yeah, so overall just did that. So here I'm about to do the normal detail on the leather. So the leather has some areas that are like bumps. So to this I made a fill layer and give it only a normal. So this is purely a normal layer. I think that was a normal layer, like a regular layer I did. So here, okay, so you make a normal, should I say, a regular layer, not a fill layer. And then what we're going to do is draw on it. So once again, turn off all of every setting aside from normal. So now on our brush, what we want to do is go to the hard surfaces tab and select, and for me, I selected bevel capsule. I dragged that into the normal color tab, and essentially, although you have to play with some settings, you can draw normal detail onto the object. So I set alignment to UV to ensure that it's only going to paint on where I'm selecting on the UV. It won't try and paint it on the other side of the model. So as you can see, when I select the UV, it will actually paint this like that, and it looks like it's kind of digging into the model. This is what I do to kind of reduce how much time I have to spend on high poly models. You can draw in quite a lot of normal detail through Painter with these hard surfaces brushes. But Fortnite in general doesn't have much going on in terms of normal detail, so I would limit how much of these you use. I use these in this occasion because it was a special circumstance, but I wouldn't use these often. For this, I set the opacity to 30 so that it's not digging into the leather quite as much as it was. And from here, it's kind of just an experiment in trying to get the spacing right. The flow, the spacing, all that kind of thing. I hold Control-Alt, I think it is, Control-Alt or Control-Shift, and through that, I'm able to draw in a straight line, like this. And really, it's just a matter of playing around with the settings and seeing what you can come up with. So do this on the other side, and there we have it. We have the grip, the forward grip, completely done. So the next area I'm going to tackle in particular is the warhead itself, the rocket that's going to be fired out of the launcher. For this, I use the steel painted base material and set it to the green color that I had sampled based off an image I was using for reference. And from here, it's kind of just going through the same process again. I mean, as it is, I think this looks fairly fine. Once I set the color that I need, I'm already mostly done. So we turn off the height, the rough, ambient occlusion, etc. We pretty much want to turn rust all to about 0.3 I used. I found that was a good value. So for here we're going to tackle edge wear on the model. So to do this, I made a fill layer with a white colour on it. You don't need to change the colour at all. And I'm going to apply several mask effects to it. This is where the ambient occlusion map that you baked earlier will come important. First of all, we need to apply mask colour selection. I'm selecting only the areas that are meant to be metallic. So this is the warhead and the launcher itself. Wood and leather areas are not selected. Because we're doing metal edgeware here, so it's important that we only select metallic areas. Next, we're going to invert that mask. And we're going to add in the edges strong mask. You just highlight that over the layer. Now here, these triangle effects are because my curvature on this model on the bake wasn't very great. So you set that mask editor to inverse subtraction, I sub. Now in a minute I will remember that I forgot to bake it properly, and then I will rebake. So to make the curvature work correctly, I'm unselected every bake aside from curvature, so I'm only baking the curvature again. I simply turn the details down to 0.1, let it do its thing, and then, as you can see, the bake now looks so much better. From here, it's pretty much just playing around with the effects. Fortnite's wear is generally minimal, so you pretty much have to play with the levels and play with and kind of brush out certain areas. I later add a paint layer and kind of just experiment with the really just experiment with the settings for yourself. So I do the same process but only on the wood this time, and I select a dark color. This is going to do a similar thing as the edge highlights. However, for this it's going to be darker areas than the wood to really kind of help the edges of the wood stand out. And once again, playing with the textures, finding a balance that works. When I turn this off, it's very, very subtle, and you don't really notice how much of a difference it makes until you kind of rapidly switch between them. I later then made a separate layer for just the wear on the warhead because I wanted to fine tune it more than the sort of the regular quote unquote launcher. And so for the more or less final aspect, I spent quite a long time on this, probably about 15 minutes. All I did was I spent a long time messing around putting the shark face texture on here. I'm only going to skip through the shark face because for most of the weapons and props we do for this project, I can't see it being too relevant. But if anyone needs any particular advice for this, I will be available to ask. But as you can see, it's kind of just trying to play with the brush settings to get a balance that works. Here I've just turned on symmetry, but because the symmetry plane of my object isn't in the right place due to its pivot point in Maya, I can't get the symmetry to work properly. So in the end, I wasn't able to make the symmetry quite as symmetrical as I would have perhaps liked. As you can see here, the plane's just all over the place. So for the final, or more or less final, I just started going in with a brush and really just kind of painting out a lot of the edgeware myself. From this point forward, it's just fine detailing, but it's this kind of thing that will really kind of bring your models up. So I'm just going to let this play out, but otherwise it's pretty much just kind of playing with the brushes and letting and sort of just trying to reduce the edgeware a lot. I later go back into the base metal and I will turn, doing it now, turning off the wear that's already in the base metal, because I end up deciding I basically don't need it. So as you can see, we're just kind of really going in, just gently getting rid of a lot of the stronger edgeware. And so by the end, we have some subtle edge effects, but otherwise a fairly strong looking RPG. So you can see compared to the reference here, it's just the reference has a lot more hand painted wear, but for the look I'm going for, I didn't really want to do that. I want to kind of keep the strong wear minimal, plus it would involve a lot of hand painting. And so, coming to the end of the sort of the texturing process, I'd say we're in a decent position. So, really the big takeaways from this video, I hope, are turn off all roughness values except for the ones in the roughness base layer that you have at the bottom. Those are the only roughness maps you want. So you want the flat grey, and that will help you get this consistent look going across the model. And sampling the color chart, I've sampled colors based off the weapons that are already in Fortnite, so they should be decent colors, I hope. Also some feedback from friends. So if you stick to these colors and the materials I've used when doing your weapons, we can kind of keep a consistent look when going forward. So hopefully that's helped. Yeah, thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to just tag me in the Discord.